Good afternoon. My name is Mario Reyes. I'm the interim director of the School of Hospitality Business Management. Welcome to the Burtenshaw Distinguished Lecture Series. The purpose of the lecture series is to bring entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators in the hospitality industry to campus to share their industry insights and career path guidance to students. The lecture is part of the Burtenshaw Family Endowment that also funds a career night and scholarship. Unfortunately, we lost Jerry Burtenshaw a few years ago, but his legacy lives on in this lecture. Please turn your attention to this video tribute to the life and legacy of Mr. Jerry Burtenshaw.
The School of Hospitality Business Management at Washington State University would like to honor the life and legacy of Mr. Jerry Burtenshaw. As we celebrate 90 years of programming, we recognize Jerry as the champion and guardian of the last 40. Jerry was and will continue to be instrumental in the success of our courses, students, research, and outreach. Together with his wife Angelina, they bestowed upon us a legacy gift that funds scholarship, the lecture series, and a career night. His legacy has impacted thousands of students and will continue to do so for years to come. Many donors can write a check or speak at an event. Jerry took being a Coug to heart. He was here year after year to lend his guidance and support. He advocated for needed resources like the expansion of Todd Hall and the creation of the Seattle Center. He saw value in professional development events for students and the need to bring employers to our campuses. With a gentle grace, Jerry was always here to help elevate the program and its students to new heights. Although never one to seek out accolades, we take the time today to honor Jerry and all he means to us. A thank you is simply not enough. So to recognize Mr. Jerry Burtenshaw, the School of Hospitality pledges to honor his vision and legacy into the future. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. Before we begin this year's lecture, I would like to recognize some of the many distinguished guests in the room. Please stand to be recognized as I call your name. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Elizabeth Chilton, WSU Chancellor. Dr. Debbie Campo, Interim Dean of the Carson College of Business. School of Hospitality faculty and staff. Members of our National Board of Advisors. And members of the Burtenshaw family, please. Thank you. A small housekeeping before we start. For the students who are watching the lecture via Zoom, and for those of you live in the room, one, you will have an opportunity to ask questions of our presenter towards the end of the program, so be thinking about questions you might ask. At the end of the lecture, we will also have a QR code on the screens for your amplifier credit. Okay, that's it. This year, we are pleased to welcome Howard Wright as our distinguished Burtenshaw Lectures speaker. Howard Wright is the founder and chairman of Seattle Hospitality Group, with holdings in best-of-class management, hospitality, tourism, and transportation companies in the Pacific Northwest, including Ethan Stowell's Restaurants, Pike Brewing Company, Kenmore Air, MTR Western, Space Needle, Chihuly Garden and Glass, Sheraton Grand Seattle, Simiamu Resort, The Attic, Cedarbrook Lodge, and Monterey Marriott. Mr. Wright earned his bachelor's degree in Latin American Studies and Spanish from WSU. He is a 2020 inductee of the WSU School of Hospitality Hall of Fame. The conversation will be moderated by Dr. Jenny Sandstrom, a School of Hospitality Business Management faculty and incoming academic director for the Carson College of Business at WSU Vancouver. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Wright and Dr. Sandstrom.
is a deeper chair than I thought. Howard, I'm so excited to be here with you today.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
They got to the W's on the alphabet. I'm just thrilled. And
It took a little while,
I've
but
got another 26 years before I come back. So
it might take a while to get that way. Well, it's great to have you here. I'm so excited that you've chosen this format for our lecture today. And I'm so honored to be the person here to talk with you. And so we've got some questions for you, and we can just kind of keep going. I want to hear all your stories. I know some of them, and I'm excited to hear some more. So let's get going.
thank you. And thanks everybody for coming. I'm just thrilled that you're here. And those of you who have logged in online, thank you so much for logging in. And look forward to your participation and engagement. It's an honor for me to have you here.
So walk us through. We want to know a little bit about your journey. So what are some of the highlights that got you to where you are today?
Well, I'm a people person, and most of you in this school and in this program are, and that's what makes hospitality work. I came here as an undergraduate, as I like to say, in a previous century, and the program was well known. I didn't know about it. I was a couple of years into another major before I learned about this program, and I've kept my eye on it ever since. I continued on with my previously declared major, which was political science and foreign languages, which I've continued to enjoy, and then just followed my path, which is part of what I hope to talk about today. And when you're asked all the time, right, what is your passion? What do you want to do? That I don't believe that undergraduate students, I don't believe, have been in the world long enough to know yet maybe what their passion is. Some do, but not everybody does. Yeah. I certainly didn't know what mine was. And but if you sort of follow your nose, make yourself available, be vulnerable, and be open, you'll end up, with a very happy life.
Yeah.
Or at least I have.
Good start, right? So let's talk about WSU. So what role has WSU played in your journey? Give us your favorite WSU memory too. How about that?
Well, yeah, most of my WSU memories might get me arrested, so I don't think we're going to go there.
Okay, let's not go there.
But no, I believe that so much of life is about community and connecting with people. And I finished undergraduate school, went off and pursued had two or three different employers for the next 20 years or so before I connected back with WSU. And I know that there are some development people in the room, and for those of you who don't know what development people do, it means fundraising, right? Development officers. And I've always felt that it's about connecting with people, and I connected with Cougs, and I connected with the development people here. And my wife taught me this saying that people give money to people. And yes, WSU is a great institution, along with many other great institutions, but it's about the people with whom you connect and build those bonds. And so those are my connections with WSU, is because the people who were here when I got reengaged.
Good. I found that Cougs are quite generous in their time as well. Come lecture a class. Nobody says no. I love that. Thank you, Cougs, for never saying no to me. So tell me a little bit about your approach to lifelong learning. What does that look like for you?
Well, I love being curious, and I love exploring. I don't know. I just love exploring things that I don't know very much about, and not everything's going to be interesting to you. But I mean, we all do. We all have our news feeds. I'm not one of those people who just swipes through my phone. Many people do. That doesn't work for me. I am curious, but I'm not curious about random stuff. Yeah. And so I try to stay informed. I had a really interesting experience about 8 years ago, more or less. I'm from Seattle, live and work in Seattle, grew up there, and there was a mayor's race, and many people running before the primaries. And one of the questions that I asked was about minimum wage in the city. And the reason that I asked is that I didn't actually have an agenda or a position about it. I knew that there was an what's the right word? There was an undercurrent to raise for Seattle to have a minimum wage. The state had a minimum wage, Seattle did not. And as an employer, especially in the food and beverage sector, I was curious as to what that impact was going to have. And you might think, I hate to stereotype, but there may have been a stereotype that business owners would not want a minimum wage. I don't think that was accurate, but I asked this question at town halls and open houses and everybody running in the primary race. And I evidently asked the question too many times because when the mayor got elected, he called me and asked if I would sit on his minimum wage commission. And yeah, and what we did is that, and feel free to be one of those facilitators that starts the music and moves on to the next subject.
I didn't bring a hook. We're good.
No, but you know what's really interesting to me is that I knew this was coming, right? And so did the business community want to be steamrolled by something that was not going to be acceptable to them? Or did we want to get out in front of it? And I decided, let's get out in front of it. And I went to the business community, and that meant 4 months of almost every night, not quite, but almost every night, of town halls, meetings, conferences, things like that. Some of you in the room, your companies were there with me. And I said, we got to get this right. If we don't do anything, the campaign for a minimum wage then wanted to go to $15 now. Now, I don't want to get into the economics of it here today. That's not why we're here. But I'd like you to think about this. My position to them was, we can't afford $15 now. Back then it was $9 and what, Anthony? $9.76 or something like that. And I said, we need time. If the goal is going to be $15, that wasn't my number, that was just a stated number, we need time to get there. And we got 7 years for small businesses to get there. And I'm not sure what the question was, but I forgot to. But what I wanted to say is that is to be engaged, to be a leader, to think about what the outcome is going to be, to get the best outcome that you possibly can. And I'm just proud of the way that we engage the community. And I don't remember who this person is. I honestly don't. But we were in a meeting like this, a whole lot of restaurant and bar owners. And a guy, and those of you who are majoring in the business side of hospitality, a guy in the back said, Howard, my name's Jim, and I've got one bar, and I'm getting ready to open a second bar. And if you do this to me, I'm not going to be able to open a second bar. I can't afford it. And I said, what I'd like to help you understand is that you have 7 years to get from the present minimum wage to what $15 will be. And so I invite you to think about it that way. And I don't know what the gentleman did, but I think it was an outcome that was it was the best possible outcome considering the circumstances.
Yeah, thank you. And that did answer the question. Thank you. I want to go back to something that you said to me a little bit ago. You told me that you take the bus to work, and I love that. Tell me why you do that.
I live and work downtown, and then that story has been true until we moved 3 blocks from where I work. So now I walk.
Now you walk.
But you know what? And so I wanted. Remind me that question, okay? Yeah. So WSU over on one of the other programs, they have a program for medical, dental, and pre-vet students down in Central America, in Guatemala. And we meet here every spring before they leave. And my buddy from WSU, Mark Paxton, up in Spokane, he and I would meet with the students here. And at our age, in our 50s and 60s, I would say to the students, so how many of you, we want to pay this forward because we had a great experience at WSU and we hope you do the same. How many of you see yourselves up here talking to the next students, 20 years, 30 years from now? And to my surprise, nobody raised their hand. And I don't think it was because there wasn't the will, there wasn't the heart. There were those, I believe. but it was God, I'm 24 years old. I've got student debt. I'm applying to graduate school. I don't know what my future family life's going to be like, and et cetera, et cetera. How can I possibly think about doing that? But you can, and you do. And why do I take the bus to work? I take the bus to work because as I got older and became more and more successful as a business owner and a business operator, I realized I was getting more and more removed from the real world. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to get out into the real world. And this wasn't, some arrogant, rich middle-aged white guy, and look at me, I'm taking the bus. No, it was just I'm going to get on the bus and see what's going on in the world. And I wasn't one of those weird people walking the aisle talking to people, but
talking to yourself.
But I just wanted to know what was going on in the world, right? And I never leave a restaurant, any of ours, which we may go into a little later. I never leave a restaurant without going into the back of the house. And the first place I stop is the dish pit. Mm-hmm. And I just thank them for working.
Yeah. I noticed you went back in the kitchen after our lunch today.
I did. And just thank the students for working today. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's why I take the bus. I want to know what's going on in the world.
You want to know what's going on in the world. I like that. Tell me about, I want to shift gears just a little bit. I want to know about a key learning in your life from a failure, from something that, a challenge or a failure that helped you learn and grow.
Man, that's a large Rolodex. No, I don't know. I can't speak for any of you at your age. You're having your own experiences. Mine then was just, I didn't know what I didn't know. So when we would try something and it failed, and I'm not talking about an experiment, I'm not talking about a menu item, I'm not talking about, a hotel room concept or anything like that. No, I bought a franchise. And financed it, didn't have the money to pay for it, and it failed. Mm-hmm. And I was 28 years old. Ouch. And just getting married. And I just thought, oh man, I must be the biggest failure in the world. Mm-hmm. What nobody told me, and you guys are just going to be, I hope you're amazed by this, the economic factors back then. So we're all reading right now about slowing down. There's a slowdown in the housing market. Rents are expensive. We're hearing a lot about whether you're paying attention, whether you're studying it or not, you don't need to. You're hearing a lot about interest rates, right? 5, 6, 7%. I bought this franchise. Interest rates were 21%.
Wow.
And I see some of my colleagues who are slightly younger here than I am nodding their heads saying yes. But to the rest of you, I want to say, guys, we're not talking about some obscure government measure. We're talking about lending rates for cars, for buying a home, things like that. 21%. The gross domestic product, the GDP was negative, and unemployment rate was 8%. And my franchise failed, and I thought it was all my fault. Yeah. What I didn't have was anybody to tell me, it's amazing that you lasted as long as you had. And I said, well, I wish I hadn't lasted that long because I would have lost less money. But so failures, just be self-confident, and it gets better. Yeah. And life is just full of cycles. Yeah. And I've never seen that stop.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So just thinking about your portfolio now, that's a tough word to say, your portfolio and interests are quite diverse. What is your diversification strategy? I had trouble with that word earlier. We're good.
The reason there are so many things in my portfolio is that there's one for every multiple personality. And so it fits that way.
This sounds fun.
No, for those who know, and it's not private, for those who know, everything in my portfolio has a common denominator in it, and the denominator is taking care of people. It really is. And that sounds a little saccharine, but no, I want to take care of people not the way I want to be taken care of. I want to take care of people the way they want to be taken care of. And I just love that. I do. And it's just a very, very important value to me. So, we're in transportation. I love transportation. Motor coach companies, small regional airline over in Seattle, whole series of restaurants. Some of you are in the East and Stroll restaurant internship program here. That's one of them. And then the dean talked about, some of our hotels and tourism and things like that. I want to tell you. I want to tell you about an incident that we had last week. And this is, you haven't asked this question, but if I may.
Yeah, please.
This is about people. And I said a minute ago, it's about taking care of people the way they want to be taken care of. So we had a motor coach in an accident last week. Nobody hurt, but a lot of damage, and it was in a blizzard in a snowstorm in Idaho, and a whole bunch of cars spun out and they all ran into each other, including our motor coach. And the driver and on that particular route, as you know, it only takes one person to drive a bus, but we also have a backup person so they can trade off legs, sections and things like that. So, but they both went to the hospital as a precaution, and they were checked out. They were fine. They were released. They went home. They happened to both live in Idaho, and they went home. The passengers were reaccommodated. And I'm going to tell you something that I did, but it's not about me, please. It's about them. And I called them each at home and just left a voicemail and said, hey, how are you guys doing? We care about you. We're thinking about you. I'm the owner of the company. If there's anything our company can do for you, please give me a call back. And that's how I would want to be taken care of. And so that's what we do. And I just wanted to, that story was sort of top of mind.
Yeah. Well, that is a nice segue to something that we all know about and, well, hate at this time, COVID, right? The COVID pandemic. Thinking about the effect on your business. How did COVID affect you? And, what sort of changes are you seeing, like permanent changes, are you seeing in the industry as a result of COVID?
Well, if you hadn't asked the tag-on question, I would have said, where's my box of Kleenex? Because this is going to... COVID was hard. It was really hard. And I'll tell you guys, one of the hardest things is just not knowing, right? I mean, my parents, so let's see, my parents were born around 1930. By the time COVID hit, they were both gone. So my mother was about a 14-year-old during World War II, and they lived in North Seattle. They lived up in Shoreline. And from time to time, as I was growing up, she would tell us stories about World War II. And they'd go to bed at night, and they would draw the blackout blinds, not to keep the daylight out, but to keep their house lights out in case there was an attack, by aggressor aircraft, coming, the Japanese. And I thought, man, what would that have been like to be a 14-year-old going to bed at night thinking, oh my God, what's that noise? Is that an airplane? I don't know what that is. I'm tying this to COVID because I felt the same way. Where is this going? Am I going to wake up in the morning? And I was all pro doing everything I could to stay healthy and, taking, the vax shots and all of that. The hardest thing is when you're working with people and when you're an employer is not having the answers. People look to you for stability, and they expect you to have a vision of the future. And sometimes you just have to say, I don't know. But I always said, however this ends, I will be here on the other side and welcome you back. That's all I could do. So how has it changed things now? We may get into questions about work from home, work from work, et cetera. Our practice in non-frontline facing positions is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Mm-hmm. And I firmly believe, and we may start inching more of that, like Monday through Thursday or something like that. But when we all started returning to work, I thought, well, I don't know how we're going to handle this. And I became a stronger believer that it's connecting with people, your coworkers, your colleagues. It's being in meetings. And I think I just think that you see body language, you can hear tone of voice a little bit better, facial expressions, things like that. Don't get me wrong. I think that online learning and online meetings are necessary. I came in last night from Seattle, was in the Marriott Courtyard this morning, a couple of Zoom meetings, which I was able to take because we can. I was going to be in Pullman, and the meetings didn't have to be rescheduled. I just said I'm going to be on Zoom. And I don't know how many are online now, but I'm delighted that they can be. So, so technology has been very helpful, but I think human connection is also equally important.
Yes, I think students were happy to be back in the classroom. Am I wrong? I think that
Your class, I'm sure, but yeah.
the classroom. Thank you. But I think in general, just that return when we really did come back, I think students were really happy about it. Sometimes when you have to do Zoom on a snow day instead of having the day off, then that's changed us a little bit that way too. So yeah, there's definitely been changes in academics too. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some of the laws around that you're working in. Thinking about, weighing societal impact against the business practices and the bottom line. I know in Washington, we have some sustainability laws. We've got some things that affect hospitality businesses. Talk to us about that. How does that affect your business?
It's complex. It's really complex because, sometimes when I'm frustrated and with regulations and regulations that I don't understand why they exist, I want to wave my magic wand and say that the regulators or the city council or the state legislature or whomever is making these, you cannot be elected to your, I'm making a joke here, you cannot be elected to your position until you've had experience signing payroll.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I also think that, some regulations and some laws are good for everybody, good for all of us, good for employers, good for employees, good for families, things like that. There just needs to be a balance, is the way that I look at it. Yeah. And that's sort of a brush off answer, but I don't know what else to say.
No, I think that's good. I think, I think also thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, like thinking about the regulations in different areas where you work, different industries. You are, like we talked about the diversity in your portfolio. How is your company approaching diversity, equity, and inclusion?
I will answer that question. I'm going to go back to my last answer for a second, and that is, here's a great example of what happened in Seattle. Seattle City Council passed a law about scheduling for fast food workers. You've been there. You are there. And the fast food workers I spoke to actually didn't want it. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who don't know, there's a scheduling law in Seattle that if you change a shift worker's shift inside of 2 weeks of whenever the shift's going to be, you have to pay them overtime. And there was a small belief that people didn't like their shifts changing at the last minute. What it took away was flexibility. And from our side, on the employer side, and you guys have worked these events before, we don't know if, we don't know if the Super Bowl is coming. We don't know what the demand's going to be for Taylor Swift weekend. We don't know what the demand's going to be for an All-Star weekend, at the stadiums. We don't know if the Kraken are going to make the Stanley Cup playoffs. And we need that flexibility, and that isn't considered. So that's difficult. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And your next question was diversity. Well, we're lucky in Seattle that we don't have to work very hard for our employment, our teams. We don't have to work very hard for our teams to be diversified because we have a great base community to draw from. You just do the best you can. The smaller and smaller markets and some of the towns over here on the east side they just don't have those choices. So we do everything we can to represent our communities. We want our employees to represent our customers, mm-hmm. and vice versa. So yes.
Thank you. Let's talk about motivation. What motivates you, and how do you motivate those around you?
She is known to have said, but is not known to have created. I'm talking about Maya Angelou, the poet. It's not what you say. At the end of the day, it's not what you say, it's not what you do. It's how you make people feel. And I live by that every day. I don't always execute it, but I do think about it every morning, all right? How do you make people feel? And I used to be a lot more private in public than I used to be. I used to be a lot more private in public than I am now. And I didn't always greet people. I would never walk in, and ignore people or not say good morning or something like that. But, walking out the door of our apartment building, or I'd hold the door, but maybe not say anything. Or, the bus you were, taking Metro. Every morning I greet the driver. Good morning. I don't know whether they respond or not. But it's just, how do you make people feel? So that's one of the mantras I live by.
Good. I have a question about balance. So I know that you and Kate are very busy people. How do you maintain balance in your life between your personal life and your work life? How do you maintain that balance? I guess I'm assuming that you have balance.
Oh, we do.
Right?
We do.
Sorry to make that.
We do, and I'm sort of navigating the answer in my brain. We do have really good balance in our lives. We're parents of a now. We are parents of, how do you say this? We are parents of a now adult. So I don't. He's 32 years old. I guess he's our child. I don't want to say of a child, but you get what I'm trying to say. He's a 32-year-old adult is our son. So we get a lot of lessons growing up. Some of it from our places of faith, some of it from the community, some of it in kindergarten. And it always talks about, don't be selfish and take care of other people. What I learned, and I learned it late, I learned it way, way into adulthood. You got to take care of yourself first. Because I believe if I can't take care of myself first, I can't take care of other people. So don't be selfish, don't be arrogant, don't be a jerk, but do provide some time for yourself. And whatever that time looks like. And then you can take care of other people. Recharge your own batteries. Be the master battery so that you can help recharge other people's. But keep your battery charged, whatever that means, whether it's spiritual, whether it's hitting the gym, whether it's meditation in the morning or evening, whenever. But take care of that battery.
Yeah, good.
So the reason I went to the part about, selfish is I don't think that, some people might say, well, that sounds selfish. I don't think it is. I think I've done a better job balancing my life so that I can recharge other people. But I had to do it here first.
I like being the master battery, that you can't recharge others if your signal's too, or if your strength is too weak. Good. Let's talk about your network. How do you maintain and foster a network in this vast industry that we call hospitality?
Just, say a little bit more, would you? I'd like to answer the question, but I'd like maybe a little bit more specificity.
Specificity. So you clearly, you've talked about people a lot. So you have a great network of people. How do you manage it? How do you grow? Do you continue to grow it every day? How do you foster and maintain it?
For example, coming over here, I was delighted to get the call. At first, I struggled with a couple of calendar issues, but we worked it out. And I just like giving to people, giving my time after I've charged the battery, giving of my time. I love networking people. We all have every one of us in this room has at least one superpower, if not more. Two of mine are identifying talent and identifying opportunity, not only in business, but identifying opportunity. So that I have connected more people in talent with not having to do anything with me, but I've introduced you to so-and-so, then you guys have developed your relationship, or you've gone to work with one another, or that sort of thing. And I'm a connector. And it's just, I don't know whether it's natural born or what, but somewhere it got developed and came out, and that's what I do. I love connecting people, right?
Do you think that's a superpower?
Yeah. Somebody asked me just before this started if I would connect them with somebody, and I said yes, instantly. The minute I get your email, it turns around and you get introduced.
Good. Nice. And I think all the students in the room, did you hear that, right? Connecting is good. So we'll ask. Okay, let's talk about WSU students. So in your opinion and experience, what knowledge, skills, and abilities would make our graduates most relevant to future employers? What should they know now to begin preparing themselves for that?
Well, yeah, if you're applying for a job, look, applying for a job is hard. Applying for a job is really nerve-wracking, right? But keep doing it, because each time you do it, it gets easier. And I think just being nice, being friendly, having a smile, it actually goes a really, really long way. Come in, be human. And I mean, that's a stereotype, but that's pretty easy for WSU students to be. It's a great institution, and it fosters that culture. And culture is what it's all about. Okay. When I got my second Fortune 500 job, I was 32 years old. And I remember being in the new hire class, 11 guys, 1 woman, and we're all the same age, all eager, all happy to be there. We were all in dark suits and white shirts and ties. It wasn't the requirement. It actually was at a couple of companies, but not at this one. And the HR person's up there welcoming us and feeding us the Kool-Aid, and we were all like little birds in a nest, mouths open like this, waiting for the Kool-Aid to be poured in. And he said, "Who's the most important person in this company? For whom do we get up every morning to serve?" Well, 12 hands go up. What's the answer? He said, "Thank you for that answer, but it's the 12 people in this room. If we take care of you, you will take care of the customer. The customer will take care of the bottom line." I've never forgotten that. That was, it may not stick with you, but it sure stuck with me. And it's still there.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's a good one.
And that, by the way, your answer was my answer. I was one of the 12 hands.
One of the 12 hands. So thinking about you've hired a lot of our graduates. And so thinking about our graduates, what do you think is unique about our grads? And is there anything missing from our education here?
I don't know of anything that's missing. And what's unique is the pride. I mean, we've got this inferiority complex, right? And so we will always be loud and proud. And I would say, if WSU, I've said this before, I've said it to WSU presidents. WSU, it's not okay to brag. It's not okay to be a braggart. It's not okay to be obnoxious. But WSU needs to deliver its message loud and proud, and do it more often, and do it more frequently, and do it louder. And for those of you who might not know this, but obviously you do know this, the state gets a lot of state funding from taxes. The school gets a lot of state funding from taxes. The school also gets a lot of money from private fundraising. And there was a campaign about 20 years ago. And the tagline for the campaign, for the fundraising campaign, was WSU, because the world needs big ideas. And that's you can tell I can still remember it.
Yeah.
That really stuck with me. And WSU is a great place for big ideas, and I think we should be loud and proud about it.
Loud and proud, go Cougs, right? So, my last question: what haven't I asked you that you'd like for us to know? How's that for an open invitation?
What time does the Coug open?
Soon.
No, we're going to ask you guys to ask questions. It's a little bit weird sitting up here under a spotlight. I can barely see you, but I do see some shapes out there. And I just want to be here for you guys. So let's turn it over to Q&A.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, we've got a microphone, and we'll take any questions.
And they're seriously, I've tried to, so while you're passing the mics around and all that, why are we up here like this? So WSU called, that's a term called, I can't remember how they reached out to me, and said, would you consider doing this lecture? And I said, yes, but you need to know that I'm not I'm not shy to talk, you can tell, but I'm not a comfortable speech giver. And can we have this is called a fireside chat format? Yeah. Can we have a fireside chat format so that we can have a conversation and we can have a conversation? So there's no place for me to come down and sit in front, but I'd love to have a conversation with, well, I don't know how much time is left, but whatever amount of time is left, if we could have a conversation, I would really, really enjoy that.
Hello, Mr. Wright. My name is Madeline.
Madeline?
And I'm curious, throughout your career, there have been many changes in the market, and you seem like a very positive person and someone to be very adaptable to change. And I'm wondering what your main focus is when the market changes, when things shift in your business. How do you manage that?
Thank you. It's a great question, and I'm going to give you an answer. And if it's not the answer you were looking for, would you tell me? Please?
Sure.
Thank you. It's as larger and larger corporations get more and more efficient economically and profitably, it's really easy to cut out taking care of your people. Okay? So this last year end, well, the year end was 2 months ago, today, right? But let's say 3 or 4 months ago, we were getting ready to plan some of our holiday parties. And this is not at my specific portfolio companies, but at some of the larger ones you've heard about, the hotels and things like that. And I said, we've had a good year, and I want to share this with some of our employees. Well, some of my investors in these hotel properties are institutional investors, which means big insurance companies and pension funds and things like that. And they said, well, we can't do that. We don't allow for that. We don't allow for small bonuses. And we have a fiduciary obligation, a legal obligation, to return the maximum amount of profits to our shareholders and to our clients as we can. And I said, well, I get that, but we're going to do this. And if I have to pay for this out of my own money, we're going to do it. This is a value that makes this company great, makes this hotel great. It was actually 3 hotels, so I had to do it 3 times. But this is a value, and I'm not backing down on this. And I don't usually behave this way, but this is my line in the sand. Yeah. And so you talked about change. Where I was going to your question about change is that companies, these large institutional investors, the private equity funds, the insurance companies, the pension funds, and things like that, used to not be quite that disciplined about maximizing everything they can. So you have to, that's the change that I'm experiencing right now. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Stick by your people is my answer to, always stick by your people, no matter what the change is.
So, a little bit from a personal standpoint, right? You have to set your building blocks, obviously, for a business. Like, you have to lay your foundation and everything. So when you talk about connections, how did you decide who to work with, and why did you decide to work with them?
Oh, that's a hard question. Well, I'm a believer, and again, if I don't answer your question, please tell me. I'm a believer in mentors and asking people their opinions. Don't ask too many people, because you're going to get too many opinions. But if there is somebody, even here in your education, if there's a professor who is particularly meaningful to you, stay in touch with them. And I mean, whatever that form is. And I don't mean a Christmas card every year. I mean ping them. Hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? Text them, email them, call them, whatever the best way is. I have a couple of professors that I circled back to later, but we had not stayed in touch, right after I graduated. And just, build your networks. And when you get your first job, and then there will be another job, stay in touch with the people whom you've worked with, and they'll remember you. And you've heard all of this, basic rules before, get there early, stay late, all of that. But people remember that. And that's part of building That's part of building your network. Our son, who's at the time was much younger than you, 16, applied for his first job, and he was a sweeper in a glass factory, cleaning up all the broken glass and doing all that work. And he got home that day after his interview, and I said, "How'd it go?" And he said, "I think it went well. I think I got the job." And I said, "Great." And he said, "But Dad, I've got one question." I said, "Sure." He said, I don't understand what the guy said to me. I don't understand what the guy said to me. He said, "The first day that I'm late is the last day I'll work there." What does that mean? And where my son was going was, does that mean when I know I'm going back to school, can I be late on that day? And I said, "No, that's not what it means." So, Bill Gates Sr., the dad of the guy who founded Microsoft, he would be about 100 now, he's deceased. But he wrote a book, and the theme was half of your job is showing up. And I don't mean showing up at 8 o'clock. I mean just being engaged here, and also physically showing up. But so develop your networks, keep your friendships, stay in touch with everybody you've met here. Don't let go. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
My question is, what is the best business decision you've made, and why do you believe that?
The best business decision I've made is getting married. True story. And not to be politically correct or anything like that, but you notice I didn't specify. It's about having a relationship, and it's about having somebody there, and through the good times, and those relationships and that emotional support is great to share during the good times, but it's vitally important during the tough times, and there will be tough times. I don't know anybody who hasn't been through a tough time. And I don't know anybody who's been through a tough time, hasn't been through a tough time. I mean, every single person in this room, I recently, not recently, but I would say 20 years ago, became aware that every single person in this room has a story to tell. And sometimes we might think everybody's got it figured out. And some have it figured out more than others, but everyone has a story. And so it's just being engaged and committed to a relationship so that somebody can be there for you during the tough times. So that was my best business decision. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Adela, and I happen to work at Chihuly Garden and Glass. I'm in the admissions team, and I really enjoyed the Maya Angelou quote that you said, how making people feel special is very important. That's my favorite quote, actually. And I was curious to know, because I honestly I enjoy working at Chihuly a lot. I feel like I've grown a lot, and I feel like I've had a lot of opportunity there. I just recently moved to Seattle, and it's been a really great place to start. And I was very curious to know how much you feel that you are involved and you influence your employees and their work life. And how do you do that?
So just so I understand the question, I personally, or sort of we, the employer community?
I'll say both.
Oh boy, you didn't give me a break, did you?
I'm just really curious.
Come on, boys, help me up here.
I see a lot of the things we believe in my workplace. And it's very interesting, like the connection that I'm seeing, because I feel like it's transcending to the employees. So I just wanted to know how much you affect and influence my workplace.
So thank you for leading the question with the Maya Angelou quote. I read a statistic about a company you all know about. I read it just before the pandemic started, a month before, so March of 2020. Delta had a record year. Delta Airlines we're talking about. And other companies do this too. Not enough, but other companies do this. But Delta Airlines had a record year in 2019. And they did a voluntary bonus program to all 86,000 employees. And it cost them $1.6 billion. And they paid it to every single person, except what's called the C-suite, you know, the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, the chief technology officer, and all that, because those men and women are already superbly well paid. And they did that around the world. They did it to the guy or the woman, the person in, I don't know, the Manila airport, you know, throwing bags. They did it to every single person. And I'm telling you that story, it sounds amazing. It is actually amazing, but I'm telling you that story because that story influenced me. So not only did they impact 86,000 people in their global network, but then they impacted me. And then I made the decision to do something, fewer zeros, to do something similarly in our businesses, just to thank people. Because if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be successful. So I hope I answered your question. I answered it with sort of a global way, but.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Hello, Mr. Wright. My name is Benjamin. So I personally am going into the business world, planning on pursuing a different career area than my degree. I noticed that you have a degree in foreign language, and so I just wanted to know what kind of gravity and weight that carried throughout your early years in the getting into the business world and developing your career, figuring out what you wanted to do. You chose hospitality. You own a successful hospitality chain. Did that degree of yours keep bearing weight and adding to whenever you would apply for a job?
Yes and no. Thank you for the question. Well, back then, so many more people in your generation are starting businesses and pursuing their passions without an undergraduate degree. And I know that some administrators maybe here in the room don't want to hear me say this, but an undergraduate degree is not for everybody, right? And I mean, you guys know, the most famous person who started, the most famous company started without an undergraduate degree is Microsoft. I think it's about following your passion. And the reason that I got mine because that's what everybody did. And if you're in the right place, the right time, you know, privileged to go to undergraduate school, all of that, you can. What my Spanish degree gave me was another way to communicate with people. I had no idea I'd be going into hospitality. I had no idea that I could use my Spanish in hospitality. I can. I try to. But I didn't realize it at the time. Undergraduate degree program, yes, you guys work really hard. You study really hard. They challenge you really hard. But one of the things that I don't hear talked about, and maybe it does get talked about all the time, I just don't hear it, and that is part of going to college is growing up and just being mature, or I should say maturing, and gaining some self-confidence. You know, maybe I do, maybe I can do this. You know, maybe I do know what I'm doing. And so that's, you know, when Jenny asked, you know, what was my takeaway from WSU? WSU gave me a chance to grow up and to mature. And the 22-year-old who graduated was not the 18-year-old who arrived, right? And that's what it helped me. And I just, you know, it's not relevant, but I loved learning Spanish and just somehow had a loose wire up here that allowed me to do that. So, yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Benjamin.
We do have students watching via Zoom, so they can put their questions in the Zoom chat, and we're going to answer those live right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, This one from the Zoom chat's from Alex. Thank you, Mr. Wright and Jenny, for taking time out of your schedule to give us this opportunity. My name is Alex, and my current restaurant has recently been struggling with a sense of community and fighting burnout. How do you help foster this idea of taking care of others to reignite this idea of passion for service amongst employees? Thank you, speakers.
If I heard the question, it's a restaurant operator. Alex, a restaurant operator, asking how we keep the culture and culture of service.
How do you reignite it?
How do you
Reignite it.
reignite it? I'm sure you do, well, I hope you do this. I want to presume that you, Alex, wherever you are, I'm sort of looking out here in the middle space. I hope that you do this. I hope you're out there with your employees working just as hard as they are. I'm not suggesting you won't be working hard, but you're out on the front line and in the back of the house working as hard as everybody else. And you know, you can be a fast food manager, a fast food franchisee owner, or you can have a small shop, soup shop, something like that. People like meeting who's in charge and walking in the door, and your name tag says your name and you're the manager, that sort of thing. People like that, manager, owner. So it's if that service culture, Alex, is important to you, I'll bet you're walking it every single day. And I hope I've answered your question. Walk your values.
Any more? Yeah. Miss Nancy.
Thanks again for being here. I want to ask a more specific question to what you shared about your franchise failing, because I think there's a massive fear of failure in this generation. And so what did you specifically do after your franchise failed to pull your bootstraps up and then not be scared next time you tried something big?
I went to work for a Fortune 500 company.
Black suit, white tie.
And do you mind? Would you give me your first name?
Ari.
A-R-L?
A-R-I.
A-R-I. Ari. Thank you. Ari, I just needed a soft landing. And I knew somewhere deep down in here that I would be back. But I remember when, I'm going to say I went home to my wife. Yes, I did, but it wasn't one night. It was over a series of months, when the end was slowly arriving. And I said, I just want to go to work for somebody who's going to pay my paycheck and provide my benefits. And I don't care if I'm one of 100,000 for some global company. I just want somebody else to take care of me. And so I got my feet back on the ground and did that.
When did you know you were ready to jump back in?
When I noticed that I was working harder on my vision than I was for the Fortune 500 employer. Right?
Thank you.
True story.
Howard, I've had the privilege of hearing you speak multiple times, and as the owner of one of the world's most iconic structures in the Space Needle, one of the most interesting stories I heard you tell was regarding some ownership about that, regarding the drip line. Can you share the story about the drip line and what that means?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk with my hands. So the Space Needle was built in 1962. 1962 was a World's Fair. And there is an organization, I can't tell you their name, it's French, they're in Paris, and they get to pick who gets to have World's Fairs, when and where around the world. And somehow, little old Seattle, Washington got picked. Nobody knows how. I don't know how. I mean, it wasn't even one of the top 20 cities in the US, let alone, on the global radar. So they picked this area in Seattle. I'm just going to use, just draw this circle. They picked this area in Seattle to be the World's Fair. And the theme was, and this is 1962, the theme was Century 21, World of Tomorrow. And back then, in 1960, President Kennedy was elected. And what whom we used to call the Soviets. Now Russia is a former part of the Soviet Union. The Soviets beat the Americans into space. And I mean, I was 7 years old. And America took that as a challenge, if not an insult, and said, okay, game on. And so Kennedy, I don't know whether he said it when he was running for election or whether he said it after he was elected, but he said, in this decade, we're going to put a man on the moon. And so everything about the World's Fair was space age. And it was Jetsons, if anybody knows what that old cartoon show is, but people, people talking on small pieces of plastic that you hold in your pocket on telephones and things like that. Like that was, back in the day, there were telephones, with wires that came out of the wall, and you dialed this thing. So it was, everybody had a small jet, everybody commuted that way. So it was very futuristic. The Seattle Center campus is 74 acres. What it didn't have was sort of an iconic draw. And so 5 business leaders got together and said, we need to do something iconic to get people to come to Seattle, Washington. And so they came up with the idea of the Space Needle. They go to the Space Needle committee, board of directors, whatever it was, and said, we've got this idea, and if you'll let us build it, we will privately fund it. You have to let us operate it, but we will fund it if you'll let us build it. And they gave it some thought, time passes, and several weeks, months, whatever. And they said, nice idea. We don't have any space for it. There's no place for it. Every single square inch is already spoken for, because all these countries from all over the world come and build their exhibit. The Japan exhibit, the Israel exhibit, the Afghanistan exhibit, everybody's exhibit. And the only thing that was not spoken for was the city fire station that was already there. So it was going to kind of like get enveloped by Seattle Center, and it continued to operate as a fire station. And my granddad said, if we buy the lot across the street and build you a fire station, can we have the fire station site? And I am actually getting to your question. God, can this guy talk? And so they did. So this is a private business in a city park. And where is the property line? My granddad said, we need to own the dirt. After I'm long gone, I don't want this to be a long-term lease, 99-year lease, anything like that. We need to own the dirt. And so the city said, we'll sell you the dirt. And meaning the land, where it's built. Common term is dirt. And so they did. And they tried to determine where the property line would be. And the property line, so everybody knows the outer ring on the Space Needle, that's called the halo. And so when it rains, there's the drip line. And they determined that would be the property line, was the drip line. My only question was, what happens when it's windy? So thanks very much, everybody. I'm really glad you're here today. And come up and talk to me, ask questions anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Howard. On behalf of the School of Hospitality Business Management, we would like to present you with this plaque. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Look at that, everybody. I love that. Go Cougs. Thank you.
Go.